Okay, a very good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well on your side. Please confirm that you can all hear me and that I'm very much audible. The internet is stable on both sides. Okay, fantastic. So you will see that before I logged in, I uploaded a copy of today's PowerPoint presentation, which is in PDF format. It's also uploaded on my modules, just in case for those who could not attend today's session. So what I will do is I am going to share my screen with you shortly. If you can just give me a few seconds. Uh, uh, then once you can see it, just confirm with the thumbs up that you can see my presentation. Okay, all right, fantastic. So please note that today's session is currently being recorded and it is going to be made available immediately after today's workshop. I just want to also confirm with you guys that you're all comfortable with having the workshops from 6 o'clock up until 7 every Monday. You can just comment in the chat box if you're still fine with the time, or if you want to suggest a new time. So let me just move on to the next slide. So what we're going to be doing in today's workshop is I just want to check in with you all how your week has been thus far. And then we're going to delve into what is a short story and familiarizing the components or the elements of devising a short story. Thereafter, we are going to do a very small activity, which I hope for many of you is going to be very helpful for the upcoming assignments, assessment 2 and 3, and then we will have a brief Q&A session. So, and that's just a reminder that today's session is being recorded and it is going to be made available after today's session. So just to check in with you all, I'm just very curious that we are now gearing towards the end of August. I hope that you have started drafting assessment 2, and you have started planning for assessment 3. If you have not, please start as soon as possible because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where we're nearing towards the due date, and I feel like I am losing my marbles a bit. And let me just, contact Ms. Ngata explaining my emergency. So since we are now nearing towards the end of August, it can be a very busy month for a lot of us because we are preparing for upcoming assignments and other work commitments in order to try and balance both work and school. And we find ourselves that work is very demanding, just like school, and it often compels us to have a moment to have a time out. So with that being said, I really want to find out from you guys, how has your week been? Just comment on the chat box with an emoji or a GIF or even perhaps a phrase that essentially captures how your week has been. You will see that I decided to use my favorite GIF, which is a Mr. Bean GIF where he falls asleep in church because the sermon was quite long. And I feel like this essentially captured how my week has been, where I found myself, doing a lot of work to the point now I just find myself feeling quite feeling quite tired. So I'm just gonna give you 60 seconds to comment on the chat box just to share how your work has been, how your this week for you has been. Thank you for sharing, Malefmo. She says, I am all good, even though I am obviously fatigued. I think that is happening with a lot of us. Like, I don't know if it's just me, but I am already experiencing year-end fatigue. Like, oh my goodness. Um, I don't know. It's like we're in August and I'm already having year-end fatigue. Also because of the deadlines that have just been quite demanding. And Christy used also one of my favorite gifts. I believe this is from the Titanic film where Rose says it's been 84 years. Oh, most definitely. Yeah, most of us can relate to that. Ms. Daniel says my week has been surprisingly calm. Well, that's really nice to know. Very, very nice to know. Um, Siobhan says, need a weekend after this weekend. Oh my goodness. I feel like I need a long a long weekend after this weekend. And then Katie, thank you so much for commenting using a GIF. Maria says my week has been hectic. Yeah, for a lot of us, it's been very, very, very hectic. And then Megan, I teach and I'm the head of the school international in the pre-primary sector. It's been crazy busy and been super stressful as we just started the new academic year. I know exactly how you feel, Megan. Also because there's just a lot of demands, at work. There's tight deadlines. There's a lot of admin that you need to make sure is done, and then there's also very much tight deadlines with regards to assignments that are due. Chantal says, my son also had a lot of projects, so it's been busy and feels like I'm getting nowhere with my own work. Visa and house chores is challenging. Oh yes, 100%. I really do feel for you, Chantal. Chantal, just remember, every now and then you just need to have that moment where you just take a breather for yourself and make sure that everything else is background noise. When you just take that moment and take a deep breath and just take a bit of a breather, because I know it can be quite at times stressful, also quite overwhelming. Moradra, very nice, very interesting gift. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's see if there are any other. I see Jody is typing, so I'll be very interested to hear what she says on how her week has been. Also, while we wait, I hope you all have started on your assignments. I hope you've all started working on your assignments, assignment two, and started planning for assignments three. Those of you who have sent me their drafts, thank you very much. I will be getting back to you ASAP. But so far, what I'm reading, I'm quite impressed with the drafts. Have a lot of potential. So thank you so much to those who have sent in their drafts so far. Khalees says busy but good. Very, very optimistic. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, yeah, see, Megan is still typing. Too many things to do, Jody says. Not enough time. The only thing I'm looking forward to is watching the rugby live this weekend. Oh my gosh. I so wish I was you where I just I would watch a rugby match live this weekend. Yeah. I believe is it the Springboks versus Argentina? I believe that's the upcoming match. Megan says, I'm trying to understand how to do the planning section. Okay, thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. I will definitely explain or give you some tips on how to tackle that. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, where I essentially talk about what is essentially a short story. And I know that for some of you, you struggle to draft a short story because you just don't really know how do I use the components of writing a short story and practically applying it. So the short story, in essence, is a very concise and very self-contained written piece, and it puts a lot of focus on the character, which is your protagonist, or even your antagonist in this case, or perhaps an event. And what the short story contains or has is a plot that is unfolded within a limited time frame. It aims to explore a central theme or an idea. Please remember, whatever theme that you choose for your short story, it has to be a theme that you as a writer are passionate about, or a theme that deeply resonates with you. Because we often found in the past students who actually select themes that resonate with them, or themes that they are really passionate about, they end up doing quite well in the short story section because they are able to successfully craft their characters, the dialogue, the spatial descriptions, and so forth. So, as an author, it is important that you have to be extremely selective in your short story and the type of language that you're going to use to devise a story that's very engaging for both you, the writer, and also the reader. And in turn, it has to be quite memorable in a condensed format. So for assessment three, you will notice that for the short story section, we actually prescribed a word limit or a page limit. And this is to ensure that when you select a setting and your characters, you shouldn't have too many characters, and you should, by all means, try and stick to one setting, at most two. And this is to ensure that you do not confuse your reader. In this case, the reader is going to be the external marker. So, as an author, you should be able to capture a moment. And in this moment, this is where you evoke emotions for the reader. Even if you are doing it with the intention to unsettle us, the markers, and as long as you leave an everlasting impact for your reader. And your short story here is written in a form, literary form, where you, the author, explore some complex themes and also develop your characters at the same time. So this question I decided to pose is a question that I often get from a lot of students, where they say, why is it, or why do you believe that at times it is quite difficult? And I use the word loosely, the word difficult, to write a short story. And this is because the elements of devising a short story, which I will get into in a moment, are not effectively utilized or effectively implemented. So when we talk about the elements of the story, short story, what do I mean? So first and most important, it is dialogue. So when you incorporate dialogue into your short story, you have to ensure that your dialogue in a way that this is how your characters speak. So not everyone in your short story speaks fluently, very formally, or very iconically. So a good example here would be the background of a character that I I decided to create. So the character here, or protagonist, she's in her early 20s, and she's a recent drama graduate from Wits University. There's a lot of obstacles that she has to overcome as a drama student, such as missing the due dates of her assignments, experiencing financial exclusion, often finds herself having to pay black tax, even though she's just only a student. And she's been struggling to get roles for upcoming theatre productions and also television projects. And because of these challenges, it casts doubt on her ability as an aspiring actress, as she finds that it's always the known faces or the veteran actors and actresses who end up getting the job. So with that being said, because of this person's background, a character's life situation often influences the way that he or she communicates and behaves around people, and also how she forms relationships with other people. So this is all from the background, from the character's background. This character, in essence, here is most likely to use dialogue that is not economic, formal language, uses colloquial terms, and so forth. So, good example of dialogue, and dialogue is the sections that I've highlighted in yellow. Okay. Before I delve into, are we still following? Are there any questions? Are we still following, or is everyone still following with dialogue? Okay, thank you so much. So from the character's background, a very good example of dialogue. Here I decided to just essentially set the scene for my draft short story. So here I noticed Nella was her usual subdued self, lying on the couch, covered in a fleece blanket while flicking past every channel. Her braid was still messy, dry. She hadn't routinely styled them, being subdued before she'd officially start the day. So the first dialogue, how are you feeling today? I asked while slowly taking a gentle sip from my green tea. She sighs in disappointment. My agent's constantly telling me I don't think I've enough strength to audition again, knowing the results the same. I'm sorry, sis one, it'll get better, trust. Maybe consider doing some skits on TikTok. That way you'll get noticed. She slightly raises her voice in disbelief. Und keiner yes, she's so overly sensitive. So with the sections that are highlighted in yellow, what is the first thing that you notice? What is the very first thing that you noticed with regards to the dialogue between Mello and her housemate? Okay, so Chloe says informal language. So let us delve into the use of informal language. What do I mean when what do you mean when you say informal language? Okay, Angeline says code switching. Very good. These are very um these are very good. Your points are all correct. However, I want us to really delve into what do we mean by that. And this simple clue, it's something that students often make the mistake in, especially in the portfolio. So Megan says informal conversation, casual life between two friends. Very good. Chantal says it's not written standard English, but more how one would speak. Good. Angeline says it sounds like everyday speech. So all of these points are correct. There is something that I want to draw your attention to, and it's often a mistake that students tend to easily make in the assignments. Notice how both characters, Nelo and her housemate, when they say, I'm sorry, they do, like the character does not say, I am sorry. The writer here uses the contraction I'm instead of writing the full word I am, because essentially this is how the character speaks. She doesn't, speak. That has to reflect in your style of writing. So instead of writing the full word, um, you just write the contraction I'm, or instead of writing the full word, because of the character's background, you write yeah as in YA. So I hope you are still following there. So just remember that if, for example, your character is someone who is a vice president or a CEO, then when it comes to dialogue, then Obviously, you would omit the use of contractions and the use of informal language because this main character is a vice president. However, because this is a character relatively young, a drama student, this is her background, then you are most likely as a writer to make use of, contractions, informal language, and and so forth. Megan asked a very important question. So we write like how you would imagine the character would speak, meaning whether it's slang or formal, etc. Yes, absolutely, 100%. Because with the assignments, you would often find that, okay, this student created this well-rounded character, a character, a very young age, still in high school, tends to, has some hobbies like, hanging out with friends, or playing, PlayStation 5. And then when you read the dialogue, you find that it actually does not match the character, the character of that person. So remember your dialogue, how you write the dialogue of your characters, it needs to be consistent with the kind of character that you have you have created. So, Megan, I hope I have answered your question well. If not, please ask me to clarify again. So some very important notes with regards to this example. So again, while this information that a lot of the students tend to poorly execute the basic aspects of dialogue, and because of that, you actually do get penalized for. So notice the difference between the way the narrator speaks and Milo, and your dialogue in your short story. It has to be utilized in the following ways. The information provided in the character's dialogue, it helps the reader, in this case the marker or the lecturer, to make sense of the story. So, for example, Melo here is reflecting on how she never gets roles in both theatre and television. We are also able to get to know these characters through how they utter words, how they speak. So the unnamed, for example, the unnamed speaker here, she's very attentive and also empathetic, while Nella over here, based on the dialogue, comes across as someone who's quite pessimistic because of this constant rejection that she experiences. And also, last but most importantly, the speech pattern of the character, the use of vocabulary, slang, word choice, and overall demeanor helps the reader situate the characters in context. So, for example, the unnamed speaker and Nella are both in their early 20s, and this is reflected in how they actually speak and the kind of words or terminology they use to communicate with one another. So Angeline asked a very interesting question. She asked if the story is speculative fiction, and for instance, language is controlled by high powers, can the writer then break from stereotypical language usage according to the expected genre conventions? Yes, because this essentially all boils down to the type of characters, the characters that you have created, their personality traits, both the good and also the bad. So, based on the provided excerpt, please ensure that you follow the conventions of writing dialogue in your short story. So each speech by a character must start in a new paragraph. You often find that a speech that where a conversation that is taking place between two people, it it takes place in one paragraph instead of two separate paragraphs to indicate person A is speaking and person B is speaking. So please remember that each kind of speech spoken by a character must be in a new paragraph. The speech here must be written using double quotation marks, not single quotation marks. In the past, we have come across short stories where students use the single quotation marks instead of the double quotation marks, close and inverted commas. thirdly, very important, if your character is having a conversation with another character and this character is recalling an event while doing something, such as drinking tea or doing a monologue, you have to make sure your action that is performed by the character forms part of the dialogue. So that is, for example, from the example that I gave you, the section that I've circled in orange. She sighs in disappointment. Then this is where the dialogue starts. So here, what you're indicating to me as the marker is that while this character is saying my agent's constantly telling me about upcoming auditions and she is sighing in disappointment. She's saying it with a lot of disappointment. And again, this shows the reader, it's giving us the reader what kind of a character this is. This is the situation that she finds herself in. So please, please, please ensure that you um, that if your character is doing something or perhaps she's saying something in a certain way, you have to indicate that, because if, for example, I decide to omit the action, which is she sighs in disappointment, and immediately proceed to my agents constantly telling me about upcoming auditions and then the market is going to wonder, okay, but I'm not sure if this character is um, irritated. I'm not sure if this character is feeling pessimistic or disappointed. So, try and not try and not have the perception that the reader will automatically assume how a character is saying something. Okay. Your action and your dialogue by the same character cannot be written as two separate paragraphs. Very important. And as a writer, you are allowed to use phrases such as he said, she said, while taking a sip from her tea to indicate who is speaking and who is doing what. But remember to not over use the generic phrase like he said, she said. Last but most importantly, if your character is in deep thought, right? If your character is thinking about something, and then you, as the author, are almost giving that character unspoken thoughts. In other words, the character is thinking something to himself. Please write it in italics. So, for example, there is dialogue here, and then after the dialogue, I insert the character's internal thought, what she's thinking inside. You're so overly sensitive. So whatever the character is thinking inside, but the other characters, don't know what that person is thinking of, you simply write it in italics. A lot of contemporary authors actually do this quite a lot. For example, Gillian Flynn, who wrote Gone Girl and Sharp Objects, um, George R. Martin in his a song of ice and fire. I hope I got it correct. A song of ice and fire books. Paul Hawkins has also does that. So just remember, anything that the character is thinking about but is unable to say it, then you just simply write it in italics. Just want to see if there are any questions in the chat box before I proceed to characterization. So Jody says, I've written my short stories without quotation marks for first and second year and was not penalized. Can I keep doing that? Or is that a bad habit I need to kick? It was a stylistic choice. Okay. Um, so Jody, just to answer your question, I think this was because we were a little bit too lenient back then because we were like, okay, let's not be too harsh about it. But this year things are a tad different. So please remember to just stick to those conventions, especially when using dialogue. Um, Plus, we also have, like, what if perhaps, in the past, I think I have marked your portfolios and your assignment before. Perhaps I might not be the one marking your assignment this year. You just never know. And then Megan says, can you, as the writer, insert the thoughts of a character while they are having a conversation? That is, a memory pops up. Yes, absolutely, 100%. And then Angeline says, Ali Smith does that. So with characterization, when we talk about characterization, I always use the simple um, and like analogy of the skeleton. So think of a skeletal drawing, and in the skeletal drawing, you are essentially assigning characteristics that essentially make it human. So this is how you are actually creating a character in your story. You are assigning both the positive and also the negative personality traits because in real life we all have our flaws, and it's our flaws that make us human. So when you are making use of characterization in your short story, remember to clearly state who your character is and the role that she plays in your short story. Avoid confusing the reader by switching between the first name and the last name of your character. So if your character is Lindo Kuhle Phakathi, right? Avoid writing, for example, Lindo Kuhle Phakathi in the first sentence, and then in the second sentence you write Miss Phakathi, and then in the third sentence you write Lindo Kuhle, and then in the fourth sentence you write the person's surname. So this is actually a very common mistake that I found that you know aspiring writers such as yourselves make. It confuses the reader. Please also avoid devising generic character names like John Doe and Jane Doe or Mary Smith. If, for example, you are writing a scene and it takes place in the hospital, right? And then in the hospital, a patient who was found lying in a ditch somewhere, didn't have some form of identification with her, then you can assign the name like your John Doe and your Jane Doe. But generic names. Please try and avoid doing that at all times. There are some authors that I know who actually use generic names, but I won't mention those authors just in case perhaps there is someone in this workshop whose favorite author is that person. Avoid creating character names and attempt to try hard to be different. All right. Please, please, please. For the life of Mary and Joseph, Neptune, and Pluto, please avoid creating character names because you're trying too hard to come across as different or trying to be different. So, unless your short story is science fiction, fantasy, or dystopian fiction, then you can use names like Rumpelstiltskin, Ramsbottom, or Zeusk, etc. Again, it boils down to the genre that you are writing for. Also, please don't introduce too many characters in your short story. So yeah, as your lecturers and also the external markers, like we can't keep up reading a scene that has 10 Secret Service agents who are in a meeting trying to devise a plan on how to handle the sudden rise of UFOs and alien sightings. I believe recently there was actually news of a meteor in Cape Town. So you can't follow a scene where there's like 10 people in a meeting, trying to discuss a meteor that just landed in Cape Town. It's also impossible for us to follow a scene um, of 20 employees that are in an X meeting, formerly known as Twitter, chaired by Elon Musk, on how to try and promote free speech for conservatives because the US elections are like around the corner. So just make sure you keep your characters to a bare minimum. Your characters in the scene to a bare minimum. At the very most, try and not exceed 3 characters in one scene. At the very least, try and not go above um, 3 characters. Then, describing your characters. When you describe your characters, try and be a little bit creative. So here, your main character does not have to be like this woman who's in her 40s with medium height and blonde hair and blue eyes. Oh my goodness, I just weep when I read that. Please, for the life of Mary and Joseph, please avoid, describing your characters in a very generic sense, in a very, very generic way. Take note of the people that you stay with. See, try and observe, people in a public space or even people that you work with. Do they honestly really edify the typical woman in her 40s of medium height with blonde hair and blue eyes? Answer is no. So an example here is a character who works as a journalist as at a newspaper called the Daily Express. So what I will do is that I'm going to give you 5 minutes to read the example, which I've divided into the character's personal background, physical appearances, and flaws that make her human. And then within that space of 5 minutes while you are reading, I want you to comment on what do you notice about the characterization of Enzo Gush. Also, when you're sharing, please note there's no such thing as a wrong answer. Remember, I'm here to help, give you some tips here and there. So just 5 minutes, and then we will discuss it further. Also, as you read Enzo Gus's characterization, also think about how do you envision the dialogue that includes Enzo Gusle, this journalist? What do you think her dialogue would be like? Do you think she's someone who would be speaking economically, someone who would be speaking both economically and using colloquial language, or someone who would speak purely, strictly informal language? So while people are commenting their thoughts in the chat box, because I found Angeline wrote a very interesting comment on the use of quotation marks. And she said Ali Smith does that. And I thought to myself, with regards to this using generic character description, woman in her 40s, medium height, blonde hair, and blue eyes, I immediately thought of, and I sincerely apologize if this is your favorite author. I immediately thought of Daniel Steele. And I've often found that, when Daniel Steele describes her characters, especially a woman, she uses like the generic, character descriptions. And I would just think to myself, oh, good Lord, Lord have mercy. Let's see in the chat box. The aspects of her characterization are congruent, that is, her behavior and her dress reflect her background. Excellent. Really, really nice. Thank you, Angeline. Also just a quick question. Um, Her overall demeanor, when we look at her overall demeanor, how do you think her overall demeanor would be like as a journalist who works at a newspaper, her overall demeanor. I think it would be um, so realistic that it would be something that a lot of readers will relate to, in my opinion. So I see we have a couple of people typing. So while we wait, Angeline goes on and says she's courageous, but at a cost, maybe. Ah, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Because what if she comes across a story that's like a huge, huge, like, expose? What does that say to her being courageous? Um, which she's still going to be that courageous, person if she comes across a story that is going to implicate a lot of well-known people. Megan says her overall demeanor would be strong, curious, and determined. Very good. Malio says characterization, her life experience inspired by her career choice, the way that she interacts with other people, and the kind of articles she likes to write. Bingo, spot on, spot on. Then Ngenzeni says the fact that she witnessed her uncle's mob justice murder seems like a motive enough to push her towards uncovering the truth behind township crime. Yes, excellent. She may actually not have believed her uncle was actually guilty. Very good. Very spot on. Thank you so much for that. So I'm just gonna wait for Jody, Maria, and to type their answers, and then we're going to get into a very, very short activity. Also, I do want to say this short activity that we're going to do, a lot of you will find it helpful for your assessment 3, I believe. So we're just going to wait for those students to type their replies. So Jody says, Enzo's character has been shaped by her background. Her career choices and personality has been affected by her childhood by seeming more outgoing when she might still be hurting on the inside and seeking to uncover the real truth of crimes in townships. Very good, Jody. Excellent. Chantal says her background inspired her to become a journalist, seeking truth and uncovering mysteries. Nice. She seems like a fierce character that will not that will not back away from a challenge. Very spot on. Christy says perhaps her demeanor is a mask for a frightened little girl that was traumatized by witnessing a murder. Very interesting. Very interesting. And it makes you um, question perhaps is that the reason why she always comes across as someone who's courageous, trying to mask the fragile side of herself. And then Maria says she's an ambitious person who people misjudge. Yeah, absolutely. Because sometimes people will um, confuse her being determined and courageous for someone who's just pure arrogant. So the next activity that we're going to do, and I chose a GIF that essentially captures the activity that we're going, the small activity that we're going to do, is essentially getting into the nitty-gritty of things, of drafting a short story. So at this point, you should start drafting your portfolio and also be working on assessment too. And one of the important aspects in drafting any kind of, whether it's a short story, a play, or even a radio play for that matter, is creating characters who will either be major characters in your short story or minor characters in your short story. So, in the space of 5 minutes, and using examples from the previous slide, I want you to devise two characters for a narrative text or for your narrative text. Remember to assign personality traits that your reader will relate to. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go back to the slide, which is an example of creating a character. Then what you will do in a space of 5 minutes, create two. If you can only do one character, that is fine. Create one character where you essentially give background, what her physical appearance is, and what are the flaws that actually make your character human. And you can actually decide, is this the protagonist, like the hero in your short story? Is this a minor character? Or is it even a protagonist, like the villain? Is this the villain of your short story? So at 6:55, I will just you can share your answer in the chat box, or um you can raise your hand and I'll recognize you. So 5 minutes, and then at 6:55 we'll discuss. Also, while you're doing this activity, if you find yourself struggling with this activity, I want you to think of your favorite shows, favorite television series, or favorite film that you felt, oh my gosh, this is so good. And think about why that particular film or television series was so successful. And you often find it's mostly because of the characters that have been created in that film that either resonate with a lot of people, or a character that a lot of people relate to. So a very simple example would be the Joker, the one Joker played by Heath Ledger, the late Heath Ledger, sorry. And one of the reasons why so many people like the Joker is because the way that the Joker perceives things when it comes to life, it is something that a lot of people actually relate to or resonate with. The same thing goes for the film. I think it is the John Wick film. The reason why a lot of people, despite John having committed so many crimes, and then he became he had a bounty for him. The reason why a lot of people relate to John Wick is because they're like, okay, if I was John Wick and if someone did something to hurt my dog or something to really essentially destroy me, then I would also react in that same way. So you have roughly a minute left. Okay, I see some people are still typing, so we'll just wait for them. So while students are busy typing their answers, how are you guys finding the assignment so far? Just out of curiosity, how are you guys finding the assignment so far? Is it a good challenge? Is there, a writing task that you might be struggling with that's just, you're giving it the side eye? Okay, so while we wait for the students to finish typing, I think there was one question with regards to devising a calendar. I'm assuming that this person was referring to KSK 2601 or 1601. Remember, when you do the planner, you are only supposed to signpost important dates that you're going to dedicate to working on where you specify this is how I'm going to work on assignment 2, and this is how I'm going to work on assignment 3. And for 2601, you have two options of doing the planner, either in a table format, in the format of a table where you tabulate your planner, or you simply use in a calendar format where you use the format of a calendar, and you just on those dates you just indicate, on this date I'm going to work on this, on this date I'm going to start writing task 1. um so I hope I've answered that student's question. Let's see. So Maria says, Ditiro is a young adult who comes from a dysfunctional family. She doesn't have a good relationship with her mother and her brother. Her mother, brother are friendly towards one another. She's very energetic. She likes to learn new things. Her friends think that this is extreme. Interesting. Ditiro has a tendency of disappearing from her friends. Is it ghosting? Maria, I'm very interested. Also, I'm also quite interested to know what her family name is. And is Ditiro like, does she belong to a certain to a certain clan? So for example, with us, for me, I'm Xhosa, right? And I belong to a certain Xhosa group, and there's often a perception that, oh, okay, if you're from this particular Xhosa group, then you're probably someone who's very quiet, very down to earth. Whereas if you're from this Xhosa clan, then you're someone who is like this and like that. So I'd be very interested to know what her family name is. Ditiro has a tendency of disappearing from her friends. They are concerned about why she does this. They can see that something is wrong with her, but they are afraid they're afraid of asking her because sometimes she shouts at them. Wow, this is going to be a very interesting short story with Ditiro as a main character. And it would be quite interesting if you were to write this from the perspective of Ditiro using first person narration, because I think as a reader, we're going to have some kind of idea as to why is she the way that she is. When asked questions about what's wrong with her, why is it that she tends to lash out a lot instead of just being quite reasonable? Thank you so much. Megan, I hope I've answered your question regarding the planner. Um, let's see. And Maria says, I really enjoyed doing the KSK 1601 assignment too. Oh, I'm very glad. I'm very glad. Christy, Jack Boy Wallace, a rugged warrior man in his early 30s, weathered face and piercing blue eyes and a crooked nose from his countless self-taught self-defense classes every other night. Very nice. Beautiful character description, by the way. Um, Raised in the slums of London in the early 1950s by a single mother, he learned early how to survive. Very, very good. Good use of descriptive words here also. Character here is very, very well-rounded. And I'm going to assume that Jack Boy, he's the main character in this short story. Megan says, Carla Whittaker comes from an eclectic family. She grew up surrounded by flamboyant family members who used art as a form of self-expression. Interesting. Thank you, Megan. So Maria commented and say her family name is Mahloko. She goes them. Very, very interesting. Um, I see there's someone who is typing. By the way, guys, I see we have hit 7 o'clock. Are you guys fine with me continuing with today's session, or should I stop there and then pick up in the next session, or should I still continue? My sincere apologies for that. Okay. Jody. Jody says the character's in her late 20s caring for a grandmother who's who's in a care home and has taken in her grandmother's cat. She's very caring and loving, but comes from a family that only cares about work. So she's the only person that visits her grandmother. She loves to dress in a and in baggy and uncomfortable clothes, as she hates the business look that her family always wears. And her work as a freelance graphic designer allows it. So I like how so far this character for me, it's like she wants to she has a sense of individuality here. um she knows that not being around her family is not good, and she has become shut off from her friends, as well as she has been scared to become close to people. She finds it difficult to trust people as she's scared they will leave her. Thank you so much. This is quite a very, a very interesting character. I think by the way that you wrote this character, I'm going to assume that the short story will be written in third person point of view, because I noticed you use the pronouns she, her, and her. Um, Pippa wrote, in girlhood, she had perfected winged eyeliner. Makeup had once been her passion. Curling her hair was a ritual, each delicate curl of rich hazel hair. Great, beautiful descriptive word, by the way. Had her eyes floating towards the mirror. She was beautiful and she knew it. Her vanity was insufferable, and with each deep red she painted on her lips, it seemed that she would It seemed that the world was hers for the taking. Yet now, weeks before her 30th birthday, her baggy jeans and stained grey jumper were a daily uniform. She hated nothing more than being on show for praying eyes to see. Her awkward demeanor was hard to hide. She hoped her warm smile and gentle eyes conveyed enough interest and care, but really she feared her social anxiety was beginning to consume her life, the grip she held tightly loosening. She was fighting demons nobody else could see was there. Thank you so much for this wonderful character that you've created, Pepper. Thank you so, so much. Um, Chantal says Aura Flynn is a 35-year-old writer of children's books. That's quite nice. Interestingly, now that you mention it, I think there is an open call for children's short stories. I mustn't forget to actually send her to the writing creative writing mail list. She grew up in a very poor household where she was sometimes mistreated but always loved. She was the eldest of three daughters, so it was easy getting into trouble for her smaller sister's mischief, but she has accepted the responsibility because she adored her sisters. She's an eccentric person whose favorite color is the rainbow. Being an introvert, she loves all things bright and beautiful, nature walks and the beach with with its gorgeous sunsets. As a result, she's always seen wearing bright colors, especially floral, standing out whether it was winter or summer, sporting a book in one hand and comfortable shoes as to walk as far as her legs could carry her. Her hair flows in long auburn waves down her back, and her face and arms are proof of the sun often kissing her skin. A beautiful description here. Um, Flecked with freckles and a tint of pink to her cheeks and ears. Her eyes are green and alert, finding wonder in everything. Due to her introverted nature, Aura has trouble making her friends and tends to be very socially awkward in crowds. She's your typical wallflower. Wow. Thank you very much for this wonderful for those wonderful character description. Really, really immersive for me as the reader. And then lastly, Christy says Jack Boy is a deeply distrustful and has a quick temper. Despite his rough exterior, there is unworthiness that he replays in his poetry, that he whistles and banters at 3 o'clock in the mornings in the streets of London after he has numerous cups of tea. He hides his pain in alcohol, hiding behind his vulnerabilities. Thank you so much for sharing. Interestingly, I found it interesting how you selected 3 o'clock in the morning because there's often this superstition or belief surrounding the time 3 o'clock, that if you're awake at 3 o'clock, then these are the beliefs associated with that time. So just some additional notes on the example that I gave. First and most important, you have to vision your character. So you must not create a character within a setting of your choice. So your character here does not have to be a protagonist. It can actually be the anti-hero. And we've actually seen this quite a lot in films and also television and slowly but surely in novels as well. What are your characters' mannerisms and overall demeanor? This is something that we spoke about a bit. Remember, this also establishes how he or she speaks in the text. Remember to determine your character's path or labyrinth. So, um, do you, as a writer, foresee a death, happy ending, a tragedy, a cliffhanger, or an ending that is pretty much open for interpretation? And all of these aspects must be determined under in your chosen setting. What's your character's relationship with other characters? So here, what are the dynamics of these characters in your short story? Two, character setting of your choice. So what's the overall aesthetic of the setting? So when you're describing the scene, is it rather as an aesthetic that is quite depressing, one that is a bit pessimistic, and this essentially it speaks to the genre that you're writing for, and the possible events that are set to unfold in your short story. Also, the events and actions. of your character. So decide what event or action your character belongs in, which relates again to the genre of your short story. It can be, for example, an event where there is conflict or dramatic action. And for you as a writer, you have to decide how it will end. Will the conflict be resolved? Will there be a cliffhanger? Or would you like an ending be open for interpretation? And when I say open for interpretation, this is mostly read and written in stories that are mystery, suspense, psychological thriller genres. Then, thirdly, another important aspect of crafting your short story is point of view. So this is where you have to be very selective on from which perspective are you going to write your short story? Are you going to write it in first person where you use the personal pronouns I? Are you going to use second person narrator where you use the personal pronouns you? And the intention here is to essentially break the fourth wall, or are you going to be using third person narrator such as he, she, they, etc.? In essence, this is a narrative style where you're writing from a a bird's eye view. Plot, when you, in terms of plot, just delve into the atmosphere, the objects. Where are these objects placed? What is the overall texture of these objects that your characters are, touching? You also need to delve into the character surroundings. Surroundings and the overall atmosphere here play a very important role in executing your character, your dialogue, and so forth. And last but most importantly, your log line. So this is where you condense the entire short story into one or two sentences by including the purpose, the main character, and if there is a dilemma. So the log line here, you are trying to sell your short story. And what you're doing in your log line is that you're convincing me and the markers and the lecturers as to why we should continue reading your short story. So in your assignment 3, you will notice that we there's an instruction that we say include a log line in your short story or include a log line in your play. All right. And then last but most importantly, does anyone have any questions before we bring the session to a close? So while people are typing their questions, one of the reasons why I stress the importance of starting your assignment early, and I know that for some of us, it's not um, as easy. It's easier said than done. One of the reasons why I always encourage students to start the assignments as soon as possible, and make sure that they submit a few days before the official due date is because you kind of don't want to find yourself in a very awkward situation where you're busy working on your assignment. Next thing, there's a power outage in your area, and it's big. It goes on for like more than 2 days, or perhaps you find yourself writing the assignment. You're done. You want to submit. Deadline is 11 p.m. At 9 p.m., you log onto my modules. You see that my modules is not working. You start to panic, and you find yourself, sending me an email or maybe sending me a WhatsApp message. Miss Gata, I'm struggling to, upload my assignment. So it's just those little things why I always tell students to make sure that they submit their assignment at least just a few days before the the official the official due date. And then with regards to Turnitin, please remember, because Turnitin has been enabled for both assessment 2 and 3, please remember that with Turnitin, we can only accept typed assignments, not handwritten assignment. And your typed assignments must be in PDF format. When you submit via Turnitin, please remember to click on I accept the end user license agreement, or EUL LA. And if you want to upload your assignment via Turnitin, and it's still trying to give you a score, it could be for two reasons. Number one, it could be because perhaps your assignment is not typed, and then you decided to submit a handwritten assignment. Or number two, it could be perhaps just a mild technical error. But if you are still getting a notification that says waiting for Turnitin score, then after 24 hours, then just send me an email, and then I will look into what the problem is. Another thing for Turnitin, please avoid like typing an assignment, then you print the document, and then you use your phone and take pictures of that document and use a scanning app to upload your document. Because if you do that, then you're not going to be able to get a score, a Turnitin score. And then as for the score, try and not exceed 40% your Turnitin score. So please remember to get below than 40%. So Maria asked, can we send our drafts bit by bit, like sending my poem first, then my short story, 5 days after sending the poem? Or should we send a complete draft with all the work? Preferably, rather send in the complete draft with all the work, because it's also going to help us give you proper feedback. Siobhan asked, I just want to make sure I can do my poem and short story in Afrikaans. Yes, 100, absolutely. You're more than welcome to do so. Until what day can we provide you with our completed draft? And this is for assignment 1 and 2. Christy, I think you're referring to 2 and 3, because assignment 1 is the quiz. So for assignment 2, try and do it at least like a week and a half before the official date. Same thing applies for assessment or assignment 3, a week and a half before the due date. Chantal asked, for assignment 2, we must draw up a calendar and plan specifically for assignment 2 and 3 on how we would be focusing on writing the task since February. Oh, okay. So I did post an announcement about that on my module, stating that that's actually an error, and that the date should only start from July up until the portfolio submission. So I apologize for that error on the and for that error in the assignment. So I think with that being said, we're going to bring a session to a close. And then what I'll do is that I will upload the recording of today's session. Please remember the link to the recording